word is this? It's God's, right? Therefore, right, are these words on this page ever going to be enough to transform your life? No, but whose words are they? God's, right? And God is everywhere, and he's within most of us, hopefully all of us. And so if we want to grow more from this, what would be a logical thing we do before we start to read his word? Invite him into our minds, saying, God, I need to hear from you. Right? He's given us free will, therefore we need to offer up our minds to him. That's what I want to do right now. God, before we get into your word, the written word, we openly acknowledge your reality, that you are our creator, you are the one who saved us, you are the one that sustains us, and because of that, we invite you into our minds. We give you access to our thoughts, to our emotions. We desire to know more of your living word. Make that happen. Amen. All right, I want to start with a bit of a congratulations. Right, if you've been a part of this community in the last 4 months, you are almost all the way through the book of Deuteronomy. Right, how many of you had done that before? Anybody? This is a book that seems to be mostly skipped over, right, both individually and collectively, and that's always been a bit odd to me. Right? After the past 4 months of deeper mental and spiritual engagement with this text, I'm becoming even more confused on why more churches aren't wading into and immersing themselves in the middle of this incredible, life-giving truth. And I hope you're starting to recognize the power of these rich and deep words. But as we enter into chapters 21, 22, 23, 24, and 25, I'm beginning to see the potential source of some people's hesitation. In these 5 chapters, there are quite a few seemingly random laws that have no application to us at all today. We've already looked at laws. We started doing that with chapter 12, but the ones in this section, right, they are strange to downright uncomfortable. Let me show you a couple examples of what I'm talking about. We'll start with the strange. So Deuteronomy 22, 11 and 12. And if this isn't strange to you, come and let me know so that way I can feel ashamed. You shall not wear clothes made of wool and linen woven together. Anybody abide by this law? How about you shall make tassels on the 4 corners of your cloak with which you cover yourself? Right, when you read this, is that kind of one of those smirk like, that's weird. I don't even know why they would do that and why that would even apply to us. So that'd be random. Let's look at the strange. Chapter 25, verses 11 and 12. If a man gets into a fight with another, and the wife of one intervenes to rescue her husband from the grip of his opponent by reaching out and seizing his genitals, you shall cut off her hand. Show no pity. Right? That's downright weird. What is happening with that? We got to take it one step further. Let's go to the uncomfortable. Can't ignore what is there. Chapter 21, verses 18 and on. If someone has a stubborn and rebellious son who will not obey his father and mother, who does not heed them when they discipline him, then his father and his mother shall take a hold of him and bring him out to the elders of his town at the gate of that place. They shall say to the elders of his town, this son of ours is stubborn and rebellious. He will not obey us. He is a glutton and a drunkard. Then all the men of the town shall stone him to death. So you shall purge the evil from your midst, and all of Israel will hear and be afraid. How's your stomach, heart reacting to that? All right, some of these laws that we see in this section are difficult to first understand why God even gave them to the Israelites. Right, whether it's the really uncomfortable or the strange. And if we're able to even figure out the reasons why they were given to the Israelites, then we have to go a step further and figure out, do these laws apply to us today, 3,400 years later? Now, I think this is a major reason why Deuteronomy is skipped over as a whole. But even in this section of random laws, there are quite a few, and I should say a lot whose value is easy to understand for both the Israelites and for us today. So let me just show you 2 of them. Deuteronomy 23, 15 and 16. Slaves who have escaped to you from their owners shall not be given back to them, to their owners. They shall reside with you in your midst in any place they choose in any one of your towns. They'll be given freedom wherever they please. You shall not oppress them. I love that one. Check out Deuteronomy 24, verses 14 and 15. You shall not withhold the wages of poor and needy laborers, whether other Israelites or aliens who reside in your land in one of your towns. You shall pay them their wages daily before sunset, because they are poor and their livelihood depends on them. Otherwise, they might cry out to the Lord against you, and you would incur guilt. Now, these aren't the only two laws like this in this section. I would say that a majority of the laws from this section fall into this category as understandable and valuable to everyone. Now, I point these ones out, and I say this to encourage you to not discount all the 611 laws that we see in the Bible just because you come across one or two that aren't easy to figure out. Now, when it comes to the ones that I still don't completely understand, which there are those, like that one I looked at, right? What I have been discovering and still am is that if I read the laws in the Bible through a certain lens or filter, it gives me the ability to better understand the God who gave it, which then helps me better see the deeper purposes that he has for his people through the law. This then puts me into a better position to approach the ones that are uncomfortable and downright strange. Now, over the next few weeks, this is what we're going to be doing. We're going to be looking at those filters or lenses through which a person can and should be studying through the biblical law. Now, because we're going to stay more focused on the techniques of how to study, it means that we won't be looking at a majority of the laws themselves. Really, we maybe look at a handful at most. But our hope, as always, is to give you tools that can help you better study. Honestly, that's always my end goal with any of my teachings, is for you as a student. That you as a student would be better equipped to go off on your own and pursue this instead of being chained to the person up front. All right, there's my intro. You guys ready to grow in your Bible nerdiness? All right, this is stuff people don't look at, but man, you're going to look so much smarter after you get into this. All right, the first and in my opinion most important filter to see the Mosaic law through is the context in which it has been given. Now, for those of you that know me as a teacher, this has to be no surprise to you at all. Continually, I'm harping on and on about the importance of context. You guys figured out why I do this so often? Because without context, you cannot understand anything. Now, for the law, context takes on a couple different forms, and the one that I want to talk about this morning is why the law was given to the Israelites at all. Like, why do they have it in general? Now, in asking myself this question, why do the Israelites have the law, I decided to look back through the first 20 chapters of Deuteronomy, what we've already been studying through, to see if I could find some answers. Now, what I've discovered is back in the first 11 chapters, God, through Moses, was setting the stage, or giving his people the proper context, the correct mindset that they needed to have before he gave them any of the detailed instructions on what they needed to do when they got into the promised land. Now, that long and fairly intricate list of specific laws, they are really important for the Israelites to know. Because once they get into the land of Canaan, they're going to be surrounded by nations and cultures that do not believe in their God. Therefore, the way that those nations and cultures act is just going to be stemming from those individuals' emotions, logic, right? And not from the creator of everything. Being fully immersed in this setting required that they be given specific instructions on how to live. But before a person can truly experience and then want to follow God's plans, they have to have the correct perspective on the law as a whole. This is why Moses, in his sermons, first lays the foundation before he starts laying any of those bricks. Now, from what I see, the foundation is made up of two different principles. And with all of life, these seem fairly simple, but when you dig into them, they have a lot of complexity and beauty. First one, God is the reason why you exist and why you have everything you have. Now, if you're a note taker, write these down. You'll hear me repeat them continually. These are the main points of my sermon. But write them down so that way you can look at them on your own. God is the reason why you exist and why you have everything you have. The second one, God, the one who made you and saved you, he has plans for you. Now, continuing with metaphors, this is the soil out of which the law will grow. This is the overall context out of which the individual commands will stem and maybe even blossom. Because of that, these are the lens through which everyone, you and me, 3,400 years later included, everyone should be reading and trying to understand the specific instructions that were given to Israel. Let me say it one more time. God is the reason why you exist and why you have everything that you have. And God, The one that made you and saved you, he has plans for you, specific plans. And my hope in looking at these for the next 20 minutes is that you can gain a more correct way of approaching the 611 commandments that are given throughout the Bible. Now, this first one, that God is the reason why you exist and why you have everything. This is something that is stated over and over by Moses throughout the first 10 chapters of Deuteronomy. He continually reminds his audience that they were once slaves, literal slaves, held under the heavy and cruel hand of Pharaoh until what happened? Until God steps in and miraculously sets them free. Now, there are so many examples of this, but let me show you one straight from the mouth of Moses. Deuteronomy 6, verse 12. Again, he's speaking to the Israelites. Take care that you do not forget the Lord who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. This is a truth that Moses does not want his people to forget. Why they have what they have and who was the one that deliberately gave it to them. Yahweh, God, the creator of everything. Without him, they would be in inescapable bondage. And because of him, they are now a free and continually growing nation, both in number and in prosperity. Now, at this point, you may be wondering, all right, Evan, yeah, we heard him say that a bunch, and we get that, but what does this have to do with any of the laws that roll out afterwards? Now, that's a really good question, right? And for me, the answer is quite logical. Here's the answer. If something or someone gave you all the good that you have, how would you continue to experience more of that good? By following the guidance of the one who is the source of life. Now, I believe Moses is trying to give them the proper context through which to see and understand the value of the law. Right, let me see one more section of verses that allows Moses to declare the same truth. Chapter 6, verse 20. When your children ask you in time to come. So this is after they settle into the land, after they're kind of making their own life. When your children ask, what is the meaning of the decrees and the statutes and the ordinances that the Lord our God has commanded you? So they're asking that same question. Why did he give us these laws? What is the purpose of this? I don't get it. And you should say to your children, we were Pharaoh's slaves in Egypt, but the Lord brought us out of Egypt with a mighty hand. The Lord displayed before our eyes great and awesome signs and wonders against Egypt, against Pharaoh and all his household. He brought us out from there in order to bring us in, to give us the land that he promised on oath to our ancestors. So he's telling them, as parents, start with the context, why we are here. Talk about the salvation that you first experienced, the way that God pulled you out of the dredges and into a beautiful life. And check out verse 24. Then the Lord commanded us. You catching that? He first saved us, and then he commanded us to observe all these statutes, to fear the Lord our God for our lasting good, so as to keep us alive, as is now the case. If we diligently observe this entire commandment before the Lord our God, as he has commanded us, we will be in the right. Now, what I find so cool, Moses isn't the only biblical author that took this approach. Paul did as well. If you look through the letters, the epistles that he wrote to other churches in these small towns, you will see almost every single time, the first 2 or 3 chapters, he lays out the gospel, always. Talks about, man, this is why you have been saved. This is why you have the life that you have. And then after that, he gives them specific instructions that they need to follow. Now, in seeing the same approach used by both Moses and Paul, who lived 1,500 years apart from one another, were in different cultures, man, they weren't even under the same covenant, like the Mosaic covenant for Moses, but Paul was underneath the Messianic covenant brought in by Jesus, right? Totally different spots. The fact that they both used this style of approach is showing me that this is both universal as well as essential to understanding God's law. Now, what has solidified this even more is when I discovered a modern day term, the first principle. Anybody ever heard that term before? First time I heard it was like a week ago from a good friend. Now, in the world of science and philosophy, according to Elon Musk, and did you guys know Elon Musk is not just the richest man alive, but he's also really smart and successful? I had no clue. But according to Elon Musk, a nice video I got to watch, a first principle is what is considered a fundamental truth. It's when we boil things down to what we believe is an absolute truth. Now, instead of remaining in the secondary, we strip away all that is not fundamental and we go straight to the source. Let me give you an example that I think we can all understand and relate to. Now, this is like a first grade question, so you don't have to answer me, but how many of you drink water? Right? How many of you drink water every single day, right? We obviously all do. Why do we do this? Because it is essential to life. Without water, we would not be alive. We would not have the energy that we need in order to function well. This is a first principle. Water is essential for life. This means that even if a person takes dozens of supplements every single day, even if a person eats everything organic that has a perfect balance of proteins, fats, and carbs, right? Even if a person works out 5 days a week and is continually practicing deep breathing techniques and always takes like cold plunges in the morning, even if they do all these really good things, if they don't drink water, will any of these secondary elements do a thing? No, they would be absolutely useless. This means that at the foundation of all these other healthy things, what must be a person's first priority? Drinking water. A first principle is the root of whatever solution we need or whatever problem we are experiencing. Therefore, we must always go to the first principle to figure out what we need and how we should live. If we don't, we can only go so far in this life. And this is exactly what Moses is doing both for the Israelites and for humanity in general. He is laying a foundation off of which everything in life should be built. God is the reason why you exist and why you have everything that you have. As we live in a nation that is steadily moving away from the acknowledgement of God's reality and his power, right, we need to be also tightly clinging to this fact, this first principle, that he is the reason why we exist, why we have everything that we have, and why those of us who have cried out to him have been saved from ourselves. Now, just like Moses as a teacher, I've said this a few times, but I've found that we are so easily distracted. So I got to say it at least one more time. Without God, there would be nothing. Literally nothing. If he didn't speak every form of life into existence, there would be no life. That means no sun or moon, no planet Earth, no oceans or storm clouds or rivers. Right? It means that we'd have no vegetation or animals to sustain our lives. I hope you're tracking my train of thought. Without God, there would be nothing that provides us with life day after day. I really like the way that David says it. Right, I'm going to bring in Bible verses so that way it's not just me droning on and on. David said it in Psalms 24. The earth is the Lord's and all that is in it, the world and those who live in it. Why? For he has founded it on the seas and established it on the rivers. And most importantly, without God, you would not be here. There would be no human being, those of us that have such capable and powerful brains. Right? Without God, we would not exist. I love the way that David says it in Psalms 139, one of my favorite sections of verses. Verse 13, for it was you who formed my inward parts. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works that I know very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Your eyes beheld my unformed substance. In your book were written all the days that were formed for me, when none of them as yet existed. This needs to be the first principle for our entire lives, the lens through which we see each and every day that we have been given. And for those of us that know this, that have placed our faith that this is who God is and this is what he has done, then we have also been saved from the consequences of our own inherent wickedness, which means that we are no longer separated from our Creator. Instead of living alone in this beautiful creation, we now have a direct connection to the one who made it all, a relationship out of which we can be guided on how to live and then empowered to actually do what he is guiding us to do. When we strive to hang on to the correct way of seeing our realities, man, it can help us in endless ways. I'm finding that when I keep bringing my mind back to this first principle, it has the ability to strip away the secondary and at many times useless emotions and logic that I experience. When I remind myself that I've been made and saved by an all-powerful creator, this often allows me to not be overwhelmed by the temporary circumstances that come at me day after day. It allows me to look past the simple cause and effect of living in a broken world and then fix my eyes on the fact that a God I can trust is in control, and he will guide me through whatever this world throws at me. By continually bringing my mind back to this absolute truth, it is also positioning my heart to be willing to submit to his authority, right? To the power, to the guidance of my Creator and my Savior. And this idea of submitting is one of the hardest things for humanity to do. From what we've seen, what we see with Adam and Eve in Genesis 3, and what we're seeing currently in our culture of relativism, this idea that whatever we say is true must be true, right? Because it happened at the dawn of time and is happening during the 21st century, this shows that submission to anyone but ourselves, it has never been easy for humanity. This is why we must be continually pushing through, or looking past, or even better, stripping away the layers that we have built around the foundational truth of everything. That God is the source of life. That he created, and hopefully he saved you no one else could. I love the way that Solomon most likely put this concept in Proverbs 9. I'd read the first part of this verse before, but not the second. Proverbs 9:10. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. That's one we've heard. But check out the second one. The knowledge of the Holy One is insight. Like acknowledging his reality. That is what brings us insight. That is what brings us like a correct way of seeing everything around us. Now, when you bring your mind back to this truth, you know what it should do for you practically? It should show you that you aren't, nor should you be, the ultimate authority in your life. Which means that you don't have the right or even the ability to create the best possible plans for your life. Instead, who should we all be going to in order to figure out how we should live? Right? The one who made us, of course, right? The one who so graciously gives us life day after day. The one who willingly sacrificed his own life so that way we could be saved from ourselves. I hope you're understanding everything I'm pushing at you. It's all about who the lawgiver is, right? We must figure that out first. Before we go to his laws, we have to determine who is the one giving the law. Right? If this is who he is, right, the creator and savior of everything, then how could his plans for our lives be anything but good? Now, this is the context that Moses was trying to instill into his people. And this should be the mindset in which we approach God's commands. The lens through which we see and then try to interpret the instructions that God gave to the Israelites on how they should live. Let me say it to you one more time. God is the reason why everyone exists and why we have everything that we have. Let Moses say it one more time too. Deuteronomy 8, verses 17 and 18. Do not say to yourself, my power and the might of my own hand have gotten me this wealth. Oh man, talk about application to 21st century America. Do not say to yourself, my power and the might of my own hand have gotten me this wealth. But remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you power to get your wealth. And that one's worth writing down, meditating on. All right, the second foundational layer that Moses told his people, now this one comes more through implication, through what's being implied, than through a direct statement. But for me, it is just as clear. By God giving his people specific commands or instructions on how to live, this shows that he has specific plans for them, things that he wants to accomplish through them once they get into the promised land. So that means that not only did God save the nation of Israel because they were trapped in such a horrible place and needed to be saved, he also saved them because he wanted to use them to bring about his plans to save and change the whole world for the better. Now we see this intention clearly stated back at the very beginning, before the nation of Israel was anything but Abraham and Sarah, a barren and childless couple. So Genesis 12, it's a promise to Abraham. Now the Lord said to Abram, go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you, and I will make your name great, so that way you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and the one who curses you, I will curse you. Why? So that in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. I hope you're seeing God's deeper motivation for bringing about Israel. It's to bless the world, right? God's plans for the nation of Israel was always bigger than just the nation of Israel. It was for the entire world, for all of the families of the earth. Now, this is the second lens through which we should be seeing God's law. He gave them to his people so that way other nations could experience his power and his grace, and then the goodness that only he can bring. God gave the Israelites the law so that way they could be a tool through which the rest of the world could experience the God of salvation firsthand. Now, we've been mentioning this to you throughout the study of Deuteronomy, but let me give you a quick flyover of how this happened, right? In a lot of ways, God's law was countercultural, even to the point of being revolutionary. Over and over, God's law requires that people treat others with respect and equality, regardless of their nationality, regardless of their gender, regardless of their position on the socioeconomic status. Right? Like Chris showed us last week, God's laws are also instilling justice as a fundamental part of the Israelite society. Through it all, we see instructions that lead to a selfless and loving approach to everyone. Now, today, in the culture in which we live, we can see the value of this approach to life. But even then, even though we see it conceptually, it's not all that common, even though our country, our culture, was founded on biblical principles. Imagine then how much less common this style of living and viewing others had to have been back in the 2nd century BC, before God's standards were even formally introduced. Now, this is another major reason why God gave his people the specific instructions on how to live, so that in following his plans, the people of Israel could be a catalyst for redemption in other people's lives. Now, to show you the universal nature of this desire that God has for his people, check out a verse that Chris used a couple weeks back. 1 Peter, one of my favorite verses, just so clearly states God's purpose for us. 1 Peter 2, verse 9. But you, God's people, are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's own people. Why? In order that you may proclaim the mighty acts of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. Just like with the first absolute truth, seeing God's commands through this lens should also be helping to better position our hearts into a posture of willing submission to God. When we know that God is not only the source of all that is good in our lives, but that he also wants to guide us in our daily lives so that way other people can have a better life. And these first principles are foundational truths. They should be causing us to die to ourselves, to no longer cling so tightly to our own agendas created by our emotions and our logic, but rather to take on his cross and willingly follow him wherever he guides us to go, doing whatever he asks us to do. Now, I'm hoping logically that this is making sense to you. When we look at the one who is giving the laws and what he has done for us and what he wants to do through us in the future, how could we not see his instructions as anything but good? I hope it's also stirring something within you emotionally. If the same one that saved you from so much of your own self-inflicted disaster wants to use you to save other people, why wouldn't your heart be fully on board to the point of being passionate in following your Savior's plans? So that way those around you, those that you love, they might receive the redemption that you already have. Now, I know I remained fully conceptual and didn't get into any of the confusing, even heart-troubling laws that we looked at this morning. But just like Moses did for the Israelites and Paul was doing for the Gentiles, I think it is crucial for us to begin at the foundation of the law before we get into any of the layers. When we do this, it can give us a proper perspective on who gave the law, which will then lead to a healthy and less distorted view of the commands that he gave, even if we don't fully understand them. And even better, it can put our hearts into a position of being willing to submit, even wanting to submit to God, whatever he commands. Now, next week, we're going to be building off of this foundation by looking at other filters that will help us understand, all right, here's the Mosaic law given 3,400 years ago. Does this still apply to me today, even after the cross? So we'll look into some of the nitty-gritty. And I think you'll be surprised at how much of this law still applies to you today. But this week, still, with what we just looked at, this week I encourage you to spend a little time reading through some of the laws in Deuteronomy 21 through 25. And try to do it through the two filters that we looked at this morning. The fact that God is the source of all of life and that he wants to use you to bring about more redemption into this world. As you read through some of these ones that are confusing, even troubling, continually bring your mind back to these truths. Right? Remind yourself that God first saved them from inescapable bondage before he gave them this command. And then also say to yourself, God wanted to use them to bless all the other nations. Not to bring judgment, not to bring curses, but to bless them. Now, if you do this, I'm curious if you'll experience the same thing that I've been experiencing this past week. When I read through these hard ones, I'm experiencing less stress, less confusion. And even better, I'm experiencing more trust in the one who gave this law. Now, in my heart, I'm not a lecturer, I'm a teacher. And so if you do this, please let me know how it goes. Because we are in this together, and I want to understand the way that your mind reacted, positively or negatively, in reading these laws, and we can just talk through it. All right, I'm done. Let's worship God through music. But as they come up, let's once again just talk to God. And this time, let's thank him for these first principles. God, thank you for creating us. Think about that, guys. God, thank you for knitting us each together. Thank you for making this planet in which the sun continually rises and we get 55-degree days in February. Thank you for filling our fridges and our bellies. Yeah, thank you so much for this world. God, for those of us that have cried out to you, we also say thank you for saving us. Thanks for grabbing a hold of a wretched sinner and changing my heart. Thank you for giving us life. You are the source of everything. Please allow us to not forget that today. You are the source of everything.
God of creation, there at the start, before the beginning of time. With no point of reference, you spoke to the dark and fleshed out the wonder of light. And as you speak, 100 billion galaxies are born. In the vapor of your breath, the planets form. The stars were made to worship so alive. I can see your heart in everything you've made. Every burning star, a signal fire of grace. Creation sings your praises so alive. And God of your promise, you don't speak in vain, no syllable empty or void. chase down my heart through all of my failure and pride. On a hill you created, the light of the world, abandoned in darkness to die. And as you speak, 100 billion failures disappear. Where you lost your life so I could find it here. If you left the grave behind you, so will I can see your heart in everything you've done. Every part designed in a work of art called love. You gladly chose surrender, so will I can see your heart in billion different ways. Every precious one, a child you died to save. If you gave your life to love them, so will I. Like you would again 100 billion times. But what measure could amount to your desire? You're the one who never leaves the one behind.
Worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Jesus, a name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Oh, we live for you. And holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes and wonder, and show me who you are, and fill me with your love. Lead me in your love to those around me. Jesus, a name above every other name. Jesus, the only one that could ever save. Worthy of every is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. And I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation, and I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not. Put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken. Holy,
There is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder.
and show me who you are, and fill me with your heart, and lead me in your love to those around me. Those around me. God, we trust you. God, we need you right here in this place, in our hearts. Father, may we just not see the temporary, the things we go through. May they not distract us so. May we keep our eyes upon eternity. Oh God, we need you so. So speak to us and show us. Thank you for giving us hope, for giving us a place to dwell with you. May we just draw closer and closer. Amen. Well, if you guys need prayer, we're going to start offering just a couple people that'll be on the side after services. So that way there's just a chance for any time of response, because we really don't want to miss out on that either, and not rush in, rush out, but really give the Spirit time to speak to you. So if you need that, the gals will be up here ready to pray with you. Here probably in about 15 minutes, we will do a round table here also. So if you want to stick around for that, that'd be great. If not, have a great week. We love you guys.